Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the 814 Sports Report, a special collaboration with our John Lydic from Sunday Sports Blitz. Logan Lepiscopo back with us. And guys, we're talking NFL football. So before we get started, we're going to talk about the draft, obviously. I want to kind of get your guys' experience. John, you were at the Steelers headquarters. Logan, you in Cleveland. John, we'll start with you. Talk to me about what that whole experience was like being on the inside operation.
Yeah, it's just interesting because you see it's calm, but you kind of start to hear little different notes and nuggets on who they like, some guys that were in for visits that impressed, and some guys that maybe weren't, that they were trying to keep secret. So it was neat to see how maybe the board maneuvered. Always great to be in there around the Steelers beat reporters and stuff like that. So it was a good experience, and I think a good opening night of the draft. We'll get into how the Steelers night broke down. But yeah, it was a good one.
Yeah, in Berea, it was cool. Last year I was there when they had number 2 and they traded out. This year they had number 6 and they traded out. So last year it seemed like there were some rumbles that potentially that was going to happen. This year, I mean, they held their cards pretty close. I had no idea what to expect, but yeah, it's always fun to be on the inside, like John said, with the reporters that are constantly around the team, in and out of the building for practices, just talking with coaches and the general managers. So, yeah, good time. 2 first-round picks. As John said, we'll get into how everything kind of unfolded. Pittsburgh, definitely the more interesting side of what transpired. Yeah.
But cool, you guys were basically insiders breaking down what was happening. It was pretty cool to see. But I'd say the first 3 picks of the draft, pretty consensus. Jeremiah Love obviously getting hyped up, kind of moving up draft boards. Yeah. I think the first shocker for me was maybe Carnell Tate at 4. Yeah. Rams kind of a shocker play. Logan, we'll start with you. Biggest surprise of the first round, maybe something you didn't see coming, a pick, a trade?
I mean, it's definitely the Ty Simpson. Like, it just has to be. I was watching clips earlier today of Sean McVay post-pick, and you could just tell that was not the guy that he wanted. He even said in his presser, like, this is Matthew's team, like this is Stafford's team, and he just seemed very disinterested with the Ty Simpson pick. So everyone was pushing Mekhi Lemon to LA. Maybe that's who McVay wanted, but I think that was definitely the shocker of the night because, other than one specific analyst, nobody expected Ty Simpson to be a first-round pick. But, yeah, that's definitely the biggest shocker to me.
Same for you, John. Carnell Tate, Matthew Stafford, disrespect.
I thought Tate was interesting, given Saleh's defensive background. I thought he would have addressed maybe the edge, but they did that in free agency. I think when you look at it, Caden Proctor was interesting, but a name that, the more you read and you kind of researched on some of this stuff, I think you saw that he was going to go maybe earlier than many mock drafts had expected him to go. So I thought he was interesting with Miami there. You would have thought maybe they would have gone with Caleb Downs being there, adding a secondary guy, though, later in Chris Johnson, who I think wasn't talked about enough with the way he played at San Diego State out there on the West Coast. But, yeah, I would say that's interesting. I think the point to Matthew Stafford is, somebody brought this up today, the way McVay reacted, it's still his quarterback in Matthew Stafford. You don't want to get giddy over this new object.
That's very fair. That's true.
And so you got to walk the line. Hey, I'm excited for him, but also understanding, like, hey, I don't want to say the door is closed on Matthew Stafford. So it was, I think, an exciting first round to a point, but not as exciting as we've seen in recent years.
And John, you were the expert here. The Pittsburgh Steelers going offensive line in the first round. Curious your thoughts. What were the rumblings? Break it down for everybody.
Yeah, so obviously I think everybody thought it was going to be a receiver. I think earlier in the day as the draft day developed, it was like, hey, if one of these safeties start to slide, and there was one, not so much Caleb Downs, but Dylan Thieneman was still there, the Oregon safety. So we were intrigued there. But, of course, the receivers were still sitting there, and you're going, okay, well, I know the Steelers and Omar Khan had gushed earlier in the week over Mekhi Lemon. He gets there. It seems they're going to take him. In fact, they were on the phone with him.
Yeah, and then fly.
And then, the Eagles make the trade to jump ahead with the Cowboys. And so the Steelers pivot. I think the interesting thing about this pick, right, this is the 3rd time in 4 years that they have selected an offensive tackle. So what does that mean? It was asked immediately after opening statements by Omar Khan and Mike McCarthy. Does that signify issues with Broderick Jones' recovery from his neck injury? They said there's concerns, but wouldn't get into further of like, yeah, we don't think he's going to play again, or it's going to be a longer road to recovery than we expected. But I think the word they used was flexibility. So Iheanacho, again, for those that maybe don't know, comes over from Nigeria with his family, 13 years old, he's a soccer player and a basketball player. Plays all that through high school. His AAU coach, though, suggests at the end of his high school career, hey, why don't you give football a try? You have the size and that. He goes to East LA Junior College, does 2 years there. A scout from Fresno State, an offensive line coach, scouting him, was looking at someone else, ends up finding Iheanacho, gets hired at Arizona State, and that's how he ends up transferring to Arizona State for the last 3 years. So McCarthy said last night it's going to be right tackle for now, but this gives flexibility that he can also maybe play guard in the future. Troy Fautanu out of Washington, their pick from 2 years ago, he can play guard. And then there's also the possibility that if Broderick Jones is not ready, Troy Fautanu could go back to the left side where he's also played in kind of a natural position for him. But yet not well received last night by some in the Pittsburgh media area that we were with, the contingent there. Given the price it took to just move up maybe a spot, a couple of fourths, and the Steelers draft capital. And the Steelers fan base didn't really know how to react. It went from renegade to a name that I don't think many Yinzers probably would have known how to pronounce, nor did many of the media at first. But yeah, it was just an interesting unfolding of events because there was not just that. I was told and talked to a couple of people, they were very high on Casey Concepcion out of Texas A&M, who ends up going, as we'll talk, into the AFC North. But yeah, it was interesting because I'll leave it there and then we can go on. But it was just interesting.
I mean, listen, I think a common theme with the NFL draft, correct me if I'm wrong, but there are so many overreactions to guys that are drafted that don't work out.
You don't know until they actually play.
Exactly. You can't evaluate draft picks at least for 3 to 4 years down the line. But Logan, you've covered a lot of Steelers games. You've seen the way this team operates. You've seen their strengths. You've seen their weaknesses. I'm curious your opinions on the pick. How does he fit in? And where do they go moving forward now?
Well, I mean, I think it's a good pick, like John mentioned, the unforeseen future with Broderick Jones. Like, is the neck actually okay? Is this going to be kind of one of those Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoahs with Cleveland? Like, could he be sidelined for a while? So I think it was a good pick. I think the fans wanted receiver to complete a trio with DK Metcalf and Michael Pittman Jr., with whoever will be throwing them the football. Still unknown there, but I guess I had a question for John would be, a lot of people, you mentioned the overreaction, not happy with it. Do you feel like this was a panic after Philly jumped up, or do you think they'll just address the receiver later in the draft? Because you mentioned they love Casey Concepcion and just let him slip.
Well, listen, let's start here. They still have, as of this recording, 11 picks going into days 2 and 3. So I think there's still an ability, 4 picks on day 2 to move up for the receiver position. I think this screams to me Andy Weidel, an influence there that, hey, I know Mike McCarthy wanted the receiver. Obviously he doesn't get him, but Andy Weidel has come over from that Philly tree. They invest on both sides of the trenches on the defensive and offensive line. What have they done since Andy Weidel's come over there? I think he came over there 3 years ago. They made the pick with Broderick Jones the year prior. They have gone offensive line, defensive line, offensive line. And here's the thing. I think what for fans the issue becomes is they hear, boy, he's inexperienced. 6 years ago, he wasn't playing football. It's about projectability, athleticism, and traits. He's still got a long way to go. He's got the footwork down. It's going to be about the hand placement and stuff like that. But I think Steelers fans are going to learn to like this guy. I mean, I think he is a great personality, very humble, appreciative. He said on the conference call we had with him, his parents didn't want him to play football. They're from Nigeria. They wanted him to be a doctor or a lawyer or something like that. And he said, while they're still maybe not on board, they're pretty excited about the fact that he's a first-round pick. But I still think the Steelers are going to find a way to get a receiver. I think they're still going to need some depth at guard. There's some good ones still on the board as day 2 gets underway. But yeah, here's the problem, is when the numbers aren't there right away and it's hard to quantify offensive linemen. they want the experience and they want the numbers. And if they don't have that right away, we know this is a quiet time of the year beyond the draft, so people want to talk about it. It gets overblown, and usually you're not going to judge a draft class. Just because somebody's going to put a C out here and, the Steelers got a C in this draft, likelihood it's probably going to turn out to be somewhere in the middle between an A and a C once we go 3 years down the road, and those that have a high-graded draft may not be as highly graded 3 years from now.
How much do you guys think the fans play into the selection of players? Like, do you think McCarthy and Omar Khan are sitting here being like, if we pick this guy, everybody's going to kind of turn on us? And I know it's very easy to be like, we're doing what's best for our team. But for a fan base like Pittsburgh, I mean, they're hosting the draft. There's a spotlight on the city. I'm just wondering if you think that maybe any sort of pressure, really for any team around, but especially Pittsburgh, maybe plays into what's going on here.
I mean, I think if they were listening to fans, they would have went Casey Concepcion. I think it's as simple as that. I did expect maybe a bigger splash being the host city, maybe, the Highsmith rumors that were circling around, if they were going to make that big jump up to even get Mekhi Lemon for sure. But yeah, I think if they were listening to the fans, it would have been receiver, no doubt.
I think the interesting thing is we started a debate last night. Is like Mike McCarthy does not usually typically like in his offenses smaller receivers. Donald Driver was probably one of the smaller ones. You think Greg Jennings, Jordy Nelson, James Jones, they're all big body receivers. So the fact that they were looking at 2 slot guys is an interesting take on what Mike McCarthy, and we'll see how it all plays out as the rest of the draft unfolds.
We're now going to get to Logan's Cleveland Browns, our busiest regional team. 2 picks in the first round, Logan. They go offensive tackle and wide receiver, 2 positions that you correctly identified them needing to fill. Were you surprised with the picks? What were you hearing? Give us the inside scoop from Cleveland.
Well, I think, first of all, to label Fano just a tackle would be incorrect, and they made that very clear during Todd Monken's presser. He said he will play left tackle. He was very straightforward, like he is our left tackle. So DeJuan Jones, sorry, but your future is definitely up in the air in Cleveland. But he then went on to say the fact that he thinks he could be, an all-pro guard, a starting center. Like he's confident that he can move around.
He's not a football player. He's a weapon.
Yes, he's a weapon. He'll maybe go catch a pass from Shedeur Sanders. Who knows? But like John said with Achinhor, the versatility. It seemed like that was the play in the draft for Cleveland, because Casey Concepcion, while he may be a smaller guy, he can play the slot, but he has a lot of reps on the outside. They mentioned his punt return, kick return ability was another big selling point for them, was the fact they thought he was the best special teams receiver in this class. But with Fano, they said that was their guy. Do I think they could have got him maybe even later? Probably. They probably could have got him even later than 9th overall, but he had 74th overall. Now you're making 70 and 74 as of right now. Of course, things could obviously change. But they're making those 2 picks in the 3rd round. They have 39 in the 2nd round. And that was what Andrew Berry said. Like, we got the same guy 3 picks later while acquiring a day 2, day 3 pick in this year's draft. So they were very happy with both picks. Offensive line, of course, with Fano, the first one off the board. That obviously means he had to have been the top tackle for them on the board, because why not go Maui Noah or any of the other tackles? Like they were sold on Fano.
Yeah, it seems like his versatility definitely playing into that. My New York Giants got Francis Maui Noah, the pick. After that, maybe a little surprising, I think in most mock drafts, Maui Noah going ahead of Fano. But everybody to each their own. John, I'm curious, the Kansas City Chiefs trade up and they take Mansour Delane at 6. Yeah. You had mentioned yesterday you thought maybe a little bit of a reach for him. I'm just curious if you were surprised by the trade and surprised by the result of that trade.
Well, I think it's interesting, but I think if you're Kansas City, you lose 2, maybe 3 key parts. You lose Trent McDuffie, Brian Cook, the safety, and then I think one more corner.
Yeah, there was another corner
that also went to the Rams. But boy, if you talk about it, I heard this on Westwood One Radio last night. If you are picking corners in the top 10, they usually work out. Think about it. Devin Witherspoon a couple of years ago. Prior to that, you had J.C. Horn, Sauce Gardner, Derek Stingley, and Patrick Surtain.
Yeah.
So you've got to get that number 1 corner.
It's a pretty good looking secondary.
Yeah. The only ones that, going back in history, D. Milner was one that maybe didn't work out too well. But I thought at the time maybe a little early, but again, you go secure that corner because as we saw, he was the only corner that went. Jermon McCoy with the knee issue out of Tennessee. His fellow defensive back mate, Colton Hood, did not go. He was one of two. Chris Johnson got late in Miami, comes in there.
Snuck in there.
So, I think it was fine for the Chiefs. They knew they had to address that, and then they go get a guy that they can put in Peter Woods that really, if they had held the draft in September, Peter Woods would have been a top 10 pick coming out of Clemson. But obviously he and T.J. Parker along that defensive front for Clemson had a down year. So I thought it was interesting for the Chiefs. I still think for the Browns, and Logan, they talked about this in the pre-draft going up to this. They get these picks. They don't have to necessarily use both of those. Maybe they trade one of those thirds for a third next year to go get that quarterback. I think fan bases want to look at it again. Obviously, we're an instant reaction.
This year, we need it this year.
What's it mean for us now?
Yeah.
But it's a chess piece that they're playing down the road.
Yep.
So to be able to get the same player, knowing how the board was going to fall, I think it was a good piece of business. They still get Fano. They help build some depth across the offensive line, and then they get Concepcion. The only worry, again, he's got that short area burst, which I think is probably the best in the draft.
Yeah.
It is the hands.
The hands.
In
Yeah.
the AFC North cold weather.
Yeah, I think it's funny you mentioned the looking ahead because Andrew Berry even said during the process it's a 13, 14 month process for getting ready for a draft. Like he said we're already preparing like whatever falls this year, like that's because we're already looking to what could be available for next year. And yeah, as fans we're so quick to say that pick sucked. Why'd we do that? And then as we mentioned, 3-4 years down the line, he's an all-pro, and you're looking like an idiot from your draft day reaction. But Concepcion, yeah, I think analysts were saying he's the best separator in the entire class. So I think just with if Shedeur Sanders is a starting quarterback, we've seen what he's able to do with the deep ball. Even in college, he was very accurate throwing it deep downfield. If KC gets a good release off the line, chuck it up and hope he gets it. You also got Isaiah Bond, who's a speedster on the outside, and Jerry Jeudy's just your veteran that's going to kind of take some heat away from the younger ones.
Well, I think it's interesting to the fact, too, of you take a look at it, is Concepcion has that inside-outside flexibility.
Yeah.
But what did Shedeur Sanders, if he's the quarterback for at least right now, where did he thrive? And it was with Travis Hunter's ability to get open quick. Again, I don't know that Concepcion's the same type of talent as Travis Hunter, but he can get out, get quick in those area spaces. A little separation of those timing routes may be key in helping Shedeur Sanders feel a little bit more comfortable. And again, I don't think you can ever have enough offensive linemen. So wherever he plays, I think if Cleveland can put out the best 5 linemen, that was what was important. And I think Andrew Berry and company addressed that very early in last night.
Logan, I'm curious with about 30 seconds left. For Browns fans, maybe not happy with what happened with the way the trade transpired, any rumblings of who maybe could have gone at 6 had they kept the pick, and what was it like to experience a trade go down in the room like that?
Well, it's interesting because last year when they swapped 2 for 5, I was right next to NFL Network's Cameron Wolfe, and he goes, there'll be someone good at 5, but not as good as 2. And I'm like, what are you talking about? What's going on? So to have trades back-to-back years, that was cool. But I think really the trade came when Carnell Tate went at 4. Obviously, can't confirm that, but I think Cleveland really started fielding the phone calls after that was made because I don't care what you say, no mock you did, Tennessee was taking him at 4. It just was never going to happen.
Now, Logan, the Buffalo Bills traded back not once, not twice, 3 times. And our Philip Ward in Pittsburgh was joking, we don't got to worry about the Buffalo Bills. They're not even going to make a pick. Well, turned out he knows some ball. They didn't make a pick. Logan, 6 of the last 7 picks, I believe, in the first round were traded back. Maybe 5 of the first 6, 5 of the last 6. I don't remember exactly. But your thoughts on the Buffalo Bills doing what a lot of people kind of wanted them to do and accrue draft capital?
Well, as you can see behind us, there's no players that were selected, just a whole bunch of blank picks for Buffalo. I think it was the correct move in a draft where it was very top talent heavy.
Yes.
And once you got down the board, it's like, all right, he could be a solid 4-year starter for us, but we're not 100% sure. I think Buffalo fans lose their mind if the pick today is Denzel Boston. I think they absolutely lose their mind if that's the receiver that they decide to go with because there's corner help, there's Manuel Warren still on the board. You have linebacker C.J. Allen, Jacob Rodriguez still on the board. Jamal McCoy, Colton Hood. Like, there's so many defensive players that can help out the Buffalo Bills, and that's where they need to go. I know people are, enamored with another wide receiver being added, but I just don't think that's the smartest move to make. And maybe they go guard, because there are some good guards that are still available as well.
I would argue the talent, obviously the top end talent in the first round is obviously going to be superior to the second round, but I feel like there is a wider range, a vast array of players who profile pretty well for being second round picks. And the Bills, how many times do we got to say it, Logan? They score points in the playoffs. And they just traded for DJ Moore, so you lose that draft capital. You're going to go spend your already depleted pool on another wide receiver. It doesn't make a lot of sense. I think Bills fans should be happy. You're already late in the first round. Nobody, as you mentioned, towards the end of that round is really filling a need that's going to be your alpha receiver, a shutdown corner. You're not in that range. So why not accrue as much draft capital as you can?
Yeah, and I think that's what a lot of people's game plan was, as you mentioned, the plethora of trades that happened at the end. I mean, I've never seen anything like that where teams are going from 26 to 28, 30 to 28, like the swapping just to get a couple spots.
These tiny incremental moves were very shocking.
Yes, and I totally agree. Like, Buffalo is still going to put up 30 points a game. They need to stop their opponents from putting up 31 points per game. Like, they in those playoff games when Josh Allen is scoring 4 or 5 touchdowns for you, he shouldn't have to still put together a game-winning drive in the final 2 minutes of the game. Like, it should be locked up, game over by then. I'm very excited to see, though, where they go, because they acquired a lot of picks. And, I don't know what Brandon Beane has planned, but it's got to be something hopefully good that Bills Mafia, we mentioned earlier, the quick reactions, hopefully it's a positive quick reaction for Bills fans.
Yeah, and the Bills, Logan, it feels like the past couple of drafts maybe lacking some of that defensive talent. This is now a great opportunity in an offseason where there's a lot of criticism towards the front office between Terry Pagula running his mouth at the press conference, people not loving that.
Yeah.
Brandon Beane letting go of Sean McDermott. This is a big offseason for the Buffalo Bills, and they need to do everything they can to bolster that defense. We spent over 12 hours on draft day talking about our regional teams, but you know what? We're football fans. We had to enjoy our own teams making some draft decisions. My team, the New York Giants, making 2 picks. We'll get to that. But Logan, I think you knew you had your guy for the past how many months now? How many months has it been? Since you had the first overall pick.
Really, probably about like September when the season started.
Yeah, so since September, you get your guy, Fernando Mendoza. I know you're fired up. How did it feel to officially get the pick in? And your thoughts now?
I thought it was funny how much time they used on the clock in draft. They could have turned in the card months ago. They could have turned it in after he won the national championship. But I love the pick. I think he could be that franchise-saving quarterback. We'll see what else they do throughout the draft. You know, they got the 4th pick in the 2nd round, 3rd pick in the 3rd round, and they've got a lot of 4th-round picks to open up day number 3. So very excited about Mendoza. We'll see what exactly he brings in the Clint Kubiak offense. Tom Brady there in the front office, I'm sure could be a great mentor for him. But defense, I think, is now the focus for the rest of the draft, other than maybe a couple offensive lineman pieces, maybe a wide receiver. I'm thinking in the 2nd round, there's so much defense available. You just take the best defender that's on the boarding. Chris, for your New York Giants, it appeared that let's take a hop on over here. It appeared that best defensive player available was the move for the Giants as well.
You know, Logan, I'll ramble a little bit here.
Let's go.
It definitely, I think we can say, as we mentioned previously about what the Browns did. I think having Cornell Tate, go so early, I think really just changed everything.
It did.
I think Joe Shane, the general manager of the New York Giants, admitted they did not expect Arvell Reese to fall to them at 5. And listen, okay, I was a little frustrated at first because what do the Giants have? They have so many edge rushers, you know,
too many.
And John Harbaugh confirmed they're not going to look to move Kayvon Thibodeau. So now you got Tibbs, Abdul Carter, Brian Burns. You have all these guys, but listen, Logan, something you mentioned on a couple episodes ago is both of these guys, as much as they're criticized, are only 20 years old. And we talked about how important that is for contracts moving down the line. So you have youth. And Arvell Reese, he was mocked going number 2 overall maybe some regarded as the most talented defensive player in this
Yeah.
draft. He's so versatile. And a lot of people forget he's not just a pure edge rusher. This is a linebacker that can play all over the front seven.
Yep.
John Harbaugh is fired up to have him.
Has safety experience.
Has safety experience. So, all these Giants fans wanting Sonny Styles, wanting Caleb Downs, I get it. This dude's a baller. He's only 20 years old. He's super, super talented. John Harbaugh wouldn't pick this guy without a plan. He's going to have a plan to put him in. Now, I think a lot of more fans, I think everybody knows that Arvell Reese is good, but more fans frustrated about Francis Maui-Noa. And I get it. Caleb Downs is there. Everybody wants Caleb Downs, this freak talent. I wanted Caleb Downs.
Now he's in division.
He's a great player, but listen, Giants fans, let's be positive here for a second, okay? How many times in 2022 are we saying we hit this draft out of the park and it turned out to be a disaster? Here we are saying maybe it's not so great. Let's not overreact to the draft. That's number one. Number two, it is never a bad problem to have too many good offensive line prospects. Yeah. And the Browns decided they wanted Spencer Fano ahead of Francis Maui-Noa. I think the overall, maybe not consensus is the right word, but most experts graded Francis Maui-Noa higher than they did Spencer Fano. So that, you could say, they got the best tackle. Now, my issue here is you just signed Jermaine Illuminor to a big contract to be a right tackle. You have Andrew Thomas. I'm curious to see what they do here. I think there was a mention that Maui-Noa could be the right guard. We'll see what happens there. But listen, these are two elite players. They're only 20 years old, maybe the best at their position. Logan, I like betting on talent more than I do positional value, and I think these two guys are super talented.
Yeah, I mean, you can't pass up on what was argued Arvell Reese, maybe the best player in the entire draft, and then, like you mentioned, possibly the best tackle in the draft. I know there was some late injury concern that came out with Maui-Noa. I'm sure it'll be cleared up. That always pops up to kind of smoke screen, get people worried about taking players, but yeah, I'll be intrigued to see how Arvell Reese is used with that safety experience, linebacker. Like, he's just gonna roam around.
I think John Harbaugh just loves this guy, and they'll figure out how to use him after. But we will see what happens. Covering the draft was obviously an incredible experience. Being there for
320,000 people.
Yeah, we couldn't even really get a seat, but just being there was cool. The NFL, we talked about on our live broadcast, is just miles ahead of every other sport.
Yeah.
Getting that many people there was incredible. But hopefully our teams, Logan, can bounce it back in 2026 so we don't have to talk about these high draft picks anymore.
We'll see.
But
we'll see.
Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. We'll catch you in the next one.